They came without warning. The sky tore open above Earth's orbit like a wound splitting through the calm of space. First came the thunderous crack across the sensors, then the flicker of impossible mass arriving in coordinated formations. The Varn Dominion, the oldest, most feared armada in the galaxy, had arrived. They didn't come to negotiate. They didn't send diplomats or messages. They sent a signal that simply translated into one word across every language frequency: submit. And they expected that to be enough. Humanity had only just begun its real expansion into the stars. Earth's first fleet wasn't even fully deployed, and the new colonies barely had time to build orbital defenses. Most alien civilizations took centuries to master interstellar warfare. Humans did it in 50 years, mostly out of necessity. Because unlike others, humans didn't expand to rule. They expanded to survive. The United Nations of Earth scrambled every ship, drone, and pilot they had. Admiral Rika Thorne was the first to issue a full combat order. Her voice was calm, too calm for what she was seeing. They're in formation Omega-6, standard Varn extermination run. We've got 2 hours before they breach orbit. This is not a drill. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. Every soldier listening had already heard the stories. The Varn fleet had obliterated civilizations older and more advanced than Earth. Entire planets were turned to ash in days. Every race that resisted them was either extinct or enslaved. And now, Earth was next. But humanity had something different. It wasn't just weapons or strategy. It was a kind of fury the Varn had never seen before. Captain Jackson Rell stood on the bridge of the Nox Eternus, Earth's newest battleship, and barely out of testing. Its hull still bore unpainted panels. Some of its systems were being coded in real time by AI. And yet it was going to be the frontline ship in the fight. He looked over his crew, a mashup of humans from every continent, tired, tense, but burning with the kind of rage that comes only when someone threatens your home. "They think we're weak," Jackson said, more to himself than anyone. "They think we'll fold like the others. Well, we're not like the others." Behind him, the screen lit up with tactical readouts. Hundreds of Varn ships, forming their legendary diamond phalanx, each vessel sleek and glowing with the eerie energy of anti-matter drives. Ships that had crushed the Lurians, vaporized the K-Tech moons, and blockaded entire star clusters. The Nox Eternus? It was just one ship, but it wasn't alone. From the shadows of Saturn's rings, from Mars' underground shipyards, from the icy dark edges of Pluto's orbit, the rest of Earth's fleet rose like ghosts, battered, experimental, mismatched, but alive with a human will no machine could measure. General Hoshino's AI-augmented drone squadron, codenamed Reapers, swarmed into formation like a steel hurricane. The Helios cruiser, piloted by the first neural-linked crew, pulsed with light as its systems synced perfectly in microseconds, something even the Varn's cold precision couldn't replicate. And somewhere out there, in an unmarked ship running cold, was Spectre, Earth's first stealth corvette, rumored to carry a nuclear payload so volatile it could tear a wormhole wide open. The Varn weren't concerned. Their scans showed inferior tech, no planetary shields, disorganized ship positions. They laughed in their command decks, if they even felt emotions. To them, this was over before it began. But that was their first mistake, because humanity didn't fight clean. We didn't fight like them. We fought dirty, desperate. We used tricks, traps, and fury born from centuries of being underestimated. And as the first Earth ships moved, not in perfect formation but in chaotic, unpredictable swerves, the Varn began to realize something strange. They weren't fighting soldiers. They were fighting survivors. And survivors don't follow rules. The silence before war is always the loudest. Inside the bridge of the Nox Eternus, Captain Jackson Rell watched the countdown tick towards 0. His fingers drummed lightly against the console, not from nerves, but rhythm, the beat of focus, of tension building like a spring wound too tight. Varn fleet now within orbital strike range, the AI announced in its neutral tone. Jackson's jaw flexed. Then let's give them the welcome they don't expect. The first move wasn't a missile or a laser. It was a data burst, coded with decoys, false targeting signatures, and a secondary virus laced in an archaic Earth programming language no alien AI would recognize, C++. The Varn ships immediately locked onto the false targets, thousands of drones and fragments shaped like warships drifting across the vacuum. To them, it looked like Earth had summoned a ghost fleet. It gave the humans 10 seconds. 10 precious seconds before the Varn sensors recalibrated and saw through the lie. But that was all they needed. Jackson gave the signal. Across the scattered fleet, thousands of human-made warships, gunboats, drones, and carrier-class vessels erupted into action. They didn't move in neat lines or synchronized swarms. They moved like chaos incarnate, like a swarm of hornets, every one of them unpredictable, hungry, and burning with fury. The Reapers came first, AI drones spinning in complex orbits, detonating EMP payloads at precisely calculated points. Lights flickered in the first layer of Varn ships as their shields cracked for milliseconds, just long enough. Then came the kinetic missiles, simple rods of depleted uranium moving at ungodly speed. No guidance systems, no signals, just raw physics and hatred. One Varn cruiser, nearly a mile long, snapped in half like dry wood as a single human-made slingshot missile slammed through its core. Inside the Nox Eternus, Jackson watched the chaos unfold. "They're not adapting fast enough," said Lieutenant Cora Hale, his tactical officer, eyes wide. "It's like they weren't expecting us to actually fight." "No," Jackson replied, voice low. "They weren't expecting us to fight dirty." Earth's fleet was a Frankenstein of generations of warfare, every major weapon, tactic, and innovation humans had ever created, thrown into the void and refined through desperation. Nuclear-tipped torpedoes, AI-guided railguns, stealth-jumping corvettes, even orbital debris clouds weaponized into shrapnel storms. The Varn, for all their power, fought like kings, precise, predictable, arrogant. And humans fought like rats in a cage, vicious, clever, and with nothing to lose. Suddenly, a warning blared through the Nox Eternus. "Enemy dreadnought locking on," the AI warned. A beam of pure gravitational energy lanced through space, clipping the Nox's left engine array. Sparks exploded across the bridge as systems flickered. The ship jolted sideways, alarms screaming. "Stabilize!" Jackson barked, gripping the rail. "I'm trying!" shouted the helmsman, hands flying across controls. "Inertial dampeners offline, rerouting power." "Don't reroute. Let the engine drift." Cora turned to him, confused. "What?" "If they think we're disabled, they'll ignore us," Jackson said, already flipping switches. "Prep the stealth drive. We're going ghost." Within moments, the Nox Eternus appeared dead in the water. No active thrusters, no weapons firing, just a hunk of twisted metal, sparking and drifting, like a casualty floating aimlessly. But inside, the crew was silent, waiting, watching. The Varn dreadnought passed them by, heading toward Earth's defense grid, exposed, confident, unaware. Jackson activated the stealth systems. "Bring us in close, and when we're right beneath that bastard—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. His crew already knew. A final act of defiance. A suicide run, maybe. But if the Varn thought Earth was just another star on their kill list, they were about to learn a lesson they'd never forget. Because humanity never bowed. Not to kings, not to empires, not to gods. The dreadnought loomed like a floating mountain, its hull shimmering with plasma shields that pulsed in perfect intervals, untouchable, invincible, and utterly unaware of what was crawling beneath it. Inside the Nox Eternus, Jackson Rell stood over the targeting console, hands steady. The stealth systems were holding, barely. Power was at critical levels, heat signatures masked, but the hull groaned with strain as they slid silently through the dead zone beneath the Varn behemoth. 200 meters to breach point, Cora whispered, barely audible. Jackson nodded once. Arm the grav spike. The grav spike was a last-ditch weapon, banned in half the galaxy for its brutality. It didn't explode. It imploded, turning the localized gravity field inward, folding armor, bone, and metal like paper. Most used it against smaller ships. Jackson was about to use it against a city-sized Varn dreadnought. Charge at 30%. Any more and we burn the emitter, said the weapons officer, sweat pouring down his neck. 30's enough, Jackson muttered. We're not trying to tear it apart. Just snap the spine. The Varn still hadn't noticed them. Their scanners were too advanced, ironically. They filtered out low heat signals, weak radiation trails, all the primitive signs of dying craft. And that's exactly what the Nox Eternus was pretending to be. Target locked, Cora said. We're directly below the midline reactor. Jackson exhaled slowly. Fire. The ship shuddered, groaned, and for a second the lights flickered. Then a pulse of gravity ripped outward in total silence. It wasn't visible to the eye, but the effect was instant. The Varn dreadnought spasmed. A horrific crack split the silence as the central hull buckled. You couldn't hear sound in space, but every Earthship within line of sight felt the vibration through their sensors. One of the most powerful warships in the known galaxy twisted like it had been hit with a celestial hammer. Its central spine caved in, entire decks folded into themselves, fires erupted from its rear quarter. Then came the explosion, not of energy, but of panic, across the entire Varn formation. For the first time, their perfect formations fractured. Their command signal flickered. Small units broke off, scanning frantically for the source of the attack. Inside the Nox, Jackson gritted his teeth. The stealth field was gone now. Heat was pouring off the hull. They were exposed, and the ship wasn't meant for sustained battle. Not in this condition. We've got to pull out, Cora urged. If they swarm us, we won't last 2 minutes. Jackson looked at the display, a sea of Varn ships, confused, scattered, vulnerable. No, he said, voice iron. We hit again. Same trick, different monster. The bridge crew stared. We're dead if we stay here, someone shouted from engineering. We're dead if we don't make them bleed, Jackson snapped. They have to think we're everywhere. That Earth is crawling with madmen who'll crawl into their beds and light themselves on fire just to burn them. It wasn't about the dreadnought anymore. It was about fear. That was the one weapon humans had that worked better than any gun. Unpredictability. The kind of reckless rage that made enemies second-guess every move. Signal Spectre, Jackson said. Tell them the mask is off. It's time for Phase 2. Spectre. The ghost ship no Varn scanners could trace. Rumor had it even Earth's own command only knew pieces of what it could do. It hadn't fired a single shot yet. But that was about to change. Back in Earth's orbit, Admiral Rika Thorne stared at her displays with a kind of stunned awe. Reports from every quadrant flooded in. Varn ships downed, formations collapsing, confusion in enemy command. And at the center of it all, the Nox Eternus, a ship they had written off as lost. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Send the message, she said. Broadcast it wide, in every known tongue. The comms officer looked up. What message, Admiral? Her lips curled into a thin smile. Tell them, humanity just got started. In the deepest shadow of Jupiter's magnetic field, Spectre drifted like a ghost among giants. No lights, no beacons, no sound. It didn't need them. The crew of Spectre didn't wear uniforms. They didn't salute, and most of them didn't speak unless necessary. They weren't part of Earth's official navy. Not really. They were the kind of people Earth pretended didn't exist. Former Black Ops, cyber ghosts, AI whisperers, ex-cons with a talent for destruction, and one physicist who used to build experimental singularity bombs for fun. And at the center of it all was Commander Nyla Voss. Her eyes flicked through data streaming across her neural interface. Tactical readouts, enemy formations, live footage from Nox Eternus, and a real-time feed of Earth's deteriorating orbit defenses. None of it made her flinch. She lived in war like most people lived in a daydream. "Signal received," said a voice beside her. Not a person, but the AI integrated into her mind. Codename: Wraith, illegal tech, highly classified, technically sapient, definitely insane. "They're lighting fires, Captain," Wraith whispered in her head. "Want us to pour gasoline?" "Yes," Nyla murmured. "Let's set the sky on fire." The stealth drive disengaged. Spectre lit up for the first time, not in white or yellow, but in deep crimson. Blood-red lights. A design choice. Psychological warfare. Everything about Spectre was made to haunt the things that thought they couldn't be haunted. And the Varn were watching. Across their fractured fleet, hundreds of eyes turned toward the impossible blip that just appeared out of nowhere and lit itself up in challenge. Spectre moved fast, too fast. Its engines were laced with tech reverse-engineered from captured alien wrecks. It didn't move like a ship. It glided like a blade across glass, angles wrong, motion unnatural. And then it vanished. Before the Varn could lock weapons, Spectre reappeared directly behind one of their destroyers and fired a quantum tunneling torpedo. Not at the hull, but into the ship's central AI core. It bypassed armor, skipped straight through shields, and erupted from the inside out. The Varn destroyer didn't explode. It collapsed. Inside Nox Eternus, Jackson Rell saw the detonation on his screen and nodded slowly. That'll get their attention. It did. The Varn reacted fast, spinning entire wings of their fleet to hunt the ghost. But they couldn't trace Spectre. By the time their scanners pinged it, the ship had already moved again, hitting another target, this time a carrier, slicing through its hangar bay and deploying a cluster of silent drones that detonated with electromagnetic pulses, frying every system aboard. Chaos was complete. The Varn were losing cohesion. And now Earth's fleet, watching from the shadows, surged forward. They didn't attack directly, not yet. They hit fuel lines, disabled engines, rammed ships already weakened. Each strike was surgical, designed to sow fear, not win a single battle. Admiral Rika Thorne gave the order across every frequency. "Make them bleed. Don't fight for victory. Fight to break their belief in it." And humanity did. One Varn frigate turned on its own, mistaking the signature of a cloaked Earth corvette for a saboteur. Another tried to warp out of the system and collided with a hidden minefield seeded 2 hours earlier by civilian freighters rigged for war. In less than 20 minutes, the unstoppable Varn fleet had lost 17 capital ships. The number didn't matter to them. They could afford the loss. What mattered was why. The Varn weren't afraid of superior firepower. They didn't fear technology. But this was madness. This was war without logic. This was a species that took their worst traits, anger, desperation, unpredictability, and forged them into strategy. And in the middle of it all, Jackson Rell watched the dreadnought they had crippled begin to list into a decaying orbit, flames spilling from its broken hull. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just leaned forward and whispered, "They're starting to see it." Cora turned to him. "See what?" He looked at her, eyes hard as steel. "That we don't care about winning. We just care about making them lose." It started with a signal, high frequency, narrow band, old-fashioned, the kind of transmission no one used anymore, except spies, except killers, except the Varn. Admiral Rika Thorne stood silent in Earth Command's central war room as the signal decrypted itself across the main holoscreen. A string of images played out, footage from Earth's orbital satellites, close-ups of key cities, then zoom-ins of command centers. Then her face appeared. Her face, then Jackson Rel's, then Nyla Voss. One by one, the Varn displayed their targets, a declaration of intent. They weren't trying to defeat Earth anymore. They were trying to erase its leaders, break the command, cut off the head, and let the body rot. "They've changed tactics," Thorne said quietly. "They're afraid." But fear in creatures like the Varn didn't look like retreat. It looked like vengeance. Within the hour, Earth's lower orbit lit up with pulses of blue. Precision plasma strikes, sent down like lightning from the remaining Varn heavy cruisers. One by one, defense satellites exploded, then comm towers, then orbital elevators. And then they hit the cities. It wasn't total destruction, not yet. It was scalpel work, smart bombs, clean hits. But each one was devastatingly personal. The Varn weren't just bombing, they were messaging. "We see you. We know your homes. We can reach you anytime." Jackson Rel received the footage in real time aboard the Nox Eternus. His childhood neighborhood outside of Nairobi, leveled. No military target in sight. Just a quiet suburb where he used to race homemade hoverbikes down dusty hills. Gone. No survivors. The message was clear. This is what defiance costs. On Spectre, Nyla Voss stared at the charred ruins of a research facility she once worked at, a place that helped her develop her first stealth algorithms. She hadn't spoken of it in years. How did they even know? She didn't blink, didn't flinch, but her pulse spiked. Wraith whispered in her neural link, "They're trying to break you." "They don't know how far past broken I already am," she replied coldly. Humanity was reeling, not militarily but emotionally. Civilians panicked, evacuations triggered, broadcasts flooded with death counts and collapsing infrastructure. But something else stirred in the chaos. Rage. Not the raw, immediate kind, the slow, smoldering kind, the kind that hardens people, that binds them. Across colonies and planetary stations, civilians volunteered in droves. Engineers reprogrammed food printers to print ammunition. Kids under 16 joined orbital militia training camps. Hackers from forgotten corners of Earth's networks wormed their way into Varn comms, feeding intel to the front lines. Humanity wasn't retreating. It was rallying. Inside the Nox Eternus, Jackson stood in the central command deck, staring at a live feed of Earth's southern hemisphere, smoke, flame, chaos, and didn't say a word for a long time. Finally, he turned to Cora. "We let them hit us," he said. "Now we hit back." "With what?" she asked, exhausted. "We're bleeding. Our fleet's hanging by duct tape and prayers. Our cities are—" "Exactly why they'll never expect it," Jackson cut in. "We've lost the element of surprise, so now we give them something worse." He pulled up the old files, stuff from the first Cold War with Mars, back when humanity's colonies flirted with civil war, files tagged Oblivion Protocol. "Sir, that's a death sentence," Cora said, eyes wide. He nodded. "For them, too." Back aboard Spectre, Nyla Voss received the same file. It unlocked without her asking. She didn't question it. She just smiled. Small, tight, bitter. "Wraith," she said. "Yes, Captain?" "Warm up the Singularity Core. Across Earth's battered command, across the blood-soaked battlefields of Mars, and deep within the frozen mining moons of Europa, a new word began to echo through encrypted channels. Oblivion. Not a strategy, not a weapon, a promise. If Earth burned, the Varn would burn with it. They called it Oblivion Protocol because there was no coming back from it. It was never meant to be used. Not really. Just a myth, a bluff passed between generals in hushed conversations when wars got too close, too ugly. The kind of weapon you build to scare yourself into diplomacy. Except Earth had no room left for diplomacy now. They were bleeding from the skies, cities were fire-lit scars, and the Varn still floated above them like vultures, tightening the noose. And so Earth did what only humans would do. They pulled the pin. The first activation came from deep beneath the surface of Antarctica, where an unmarked facility called Black Echo hummed back to life after 23 years of silence. Its staff were ghosts, its systems ancient by modern standards, but its payload was eternal. Inside, locked behind 17 separate biometric keys, sat the first Oblivion core. A singularity seed, artificial gravity collapse bomb. A device designed not just to destroy, but to erase, to rip the fabric of space in a contained radius and drop everything within it into a point of nothing. One had never been tested. Now one was going to be launched. Admiral Rika Thorne gave the go-ahead without a vote. There was no time, no debates, just a grim nod, a single breath, and her voice over the line. Deploy. The Spectre was the only ship fast and stealthy enough to deliver the payload. Nyla Voss didn't hesitate. She didn't ask who wrote the protocol or what the risk factors were. She just locked the core into its chamber, nodded to her crew, and said one word. Run silent. And they did. Through the chaos of the scattered battlefield, Spectre moved like a shadow through a burning forest. Varn cruisers fired wildly into the void, chasing ghost signals, trying to locate the threat they could feel but not see. Jackson Rell watched it all unfold from the Nox Eternus's battered bridge. His ship was practically limping now, engines fried, weapons overheated, crew down to 40%. And yet, it floated at the center of it all, baiting the enemy like a wounded beast daring the wolves to come closer. He opened a direct line to Spectre. "You're sure about this?" he asked. Nyla didn't look at the camera. She was already strapped in, watching the countdown. "Not even a little," she said. Then she smiled, that quiet, cold kind of smile that said, "I'm already dead. I'm just deciding who dies with me." Jackson nodded once. "We'll keep them focused on us." "Try not to die before the fireworks," Nyla said. And then she was gone. Spectre reappeared behind the Varn's primary command ship, a behemoth known simply as the Judicator, 2 miles long, covered in anti-ship turrets, energy lances, and armor so thick it had shrugged off asteroid collisions. But none of that would matter. The Singularity Core activated. Inside its chamber, a man-made black hole the size of a marble formed, stabilized, and was ejected toward the Judicator with silent precision. The Varn detected it a second too late. They fired. Every turret, every gun, every automated defense system lit up, and all missed. Then the Judicator shivered and folded. Not exploded, collapsed inward, like it had been yanked by a cosmic hook. Metal screamed. Energy imploded. The Singularity ate the command deck first, then the engines, then the hull, folding the entire warship into a hole that vanished within itself like a snake eating its own tail. And then it was gone. The Varn command ship no longer existed. Not wreckage, not flame, nothing. Just silence. Across the battlefield, their remaining ships faltered, hesitated, like prey animals realizing the predator wasn't just mad. It was capable of unthinkable things. Admiral Thorne's voice rang out through every allied channel. Let this be a message. Earth does not surrender. Earth does not forgive. And Earth does not forget. But even as the fleet roared in triumph, Jackson Rell stood still, staring at the black spot where the Judicator had once been. What's the damage? He asked. The Nox Eternus's AI was slow to answer. Spatial stability in that sector is compromised. Gravity flux levels are increasing. A rift may be forming. He knew what that meant. They hadn't just used a black hole. They had torn space. There were whispers that Oblivion protocol didn't just erase matter. It tore reality. We just lit a match in a dry forest, Cora said quietly, watching the data stream. Jackson nodded, eyes narrowing. And now we wait to see what burns next. The singularity didn't fade. It pulsed. A black heart beating in space where the Judicator had once ruled, growing darker, deeper, wrong. At first, Earth's fleet celebrated. Even battered and bloodied, the destruction of the Varn's command ship had shaken their empire like a hammer through glass. Scattered Varn vessels began retreating, blinking into subspace, warping out of the Sol system entirely. For the first time in generations, they ran. But Jackson Rell didn't celebrate. Neither did Nyla Voss, because they felt it, even through metal walls and vacuum and distance. The after of the singularity was not silence. It was pressure. From the moment the Judicator collapsed into itself, space around the rift had begun to twist, sensors glitching, gravitational anomalies stacking up in ways that didn't make sense. Reality itself had bent. And something was coming through. Sir, Cora said, eyes locked on her screen, voice unusually tight. We're getting unknown signals from the breach. What kind of signals? She swallowed. Not Varn. Not anything in our database. No syntax, no mathematical structure, no logic grid. Just tones. Audio? He asked. Not exactly. It's like... She paused. It's like a scream, played backwards, layered 1,000 times. Jackson felt a chill crawl down his spine. Put it on. She hesitated. Sir, we don't even know if it's safe to... Put it on. A moment later, the bridge speakers cracked, then hissed, and then... A sound like ice fracturing deep underwater, like glass grinding against bone, like every scream ever swallowed by the void, all playing at once. It didn't hit their ears so much as it crept into their skulls. Crew members winced. One passed out. The ship's AI crashed and rebooted without warning. Turn it off, Jackson barked. The sound cut, but the air felt heavier, as if something was watching them now. A transmission broke across open comms, encrypted so deep it bypassed firewalls Earth didn't even know it had. And it wasn't from the Varn, it was from outside the known galaxy. We saw your spark. We see you now. The voice wasn't a voice. It was translated instinct. A thought that forced its way into minds like a cold breath down the spine. No language, just understanding. You lit the fire. Now you've opened the door. Nyla Voss received it at the same time. On Spectre, her crew had already gone silent, staring at the anomaly as it pulsed, slowly widening. It wasn't a hole anymore. It was a mouth. And the universe behind it? Didn't look like theirs. Dark stars. Planets twisting in wrong directions, shapes too large to be ships, too precise to be natural, and eyes. So many eyes. Watching. Waiting. I think we knocked on a door that was never supposed to open, Nyla whispered. Wraith spoke in her mind, quieter than usual. This is not war. This is invitation. Invitation to what? Oblivion, not our weapon. Their name across Earth, chaos returned, systems shorted, drones dropped from the sky, AI systems failed one by one. Not from attack, from overload, like something was pressing against the very edge of reality, short-circuiting existence itself. Admiral Thorne slammed her fist on the table in Earth command. "We can't deal with this," she growled. "We're barely standing, and now the damn fabric of space is falling apart." One of the scientists monitoring the rift turned, pale and shaking. "It's not space falling apart, ma'am. It's making room." "For what?" she snapped. He didn't answer, because at that moment the singularity pulsed again, this time with color, a shade that didn't belong in our spectrum. And then a shape emerged, towering, unmeasurable, wrong, not the Varn, not a ship, not a creature, just presence. And every human who looked at it, even for a second, knew in the depths of their instincts it wasn't here to conquer, it was here to clean up, to erase everything, not as punishment, but as necessity. Because humanity had done the impossible. They'd screamed into the dark, and something had finally screamed back. No alarms blared, no orders shouted, no missiles launched, because there was nothing to fight. No strategy, no protocol, no simulation had prepared humanity for this. The presence now unfurling from the breach like a god pulling its limbs through a tear in a painting. Jackson Rell stared at the main screen on the Nox Eternus, unable to speak. Not from fear, he'd seen war, death, hell, but from something worse. Understanding. This was not a weapon. This was not a creature. This was a consequence. It floated in space without motion, without energy signature, yet gravity twisted around it. The stars behind it curved like they were being pulled into a different set of rules. Time itself felt slower. The AI, recently rebooted, quietly muttered, "This entity exceeds universal constants. Causality destabilizing. Recommend evacuation of consciousness." "Evacuation of what?" Cora whispered, voice small. "Consciousness," Jackson said softly. "It means, get out of your mind." They had triggered Oblivion protocol to kill a ship. Instead, they had cut through the membrane of reality itself, a veil that was never meant to tear. Earth's entire military command was now under psychic siege. Those who stared too long into the rift began shaking, screaming, some falling dead without a mark on them. Scientists collapsed, their brains hemorrhaging from the inside. AI cores melted down, trying to process what they were seeing. But some didn't fall. Some adapted. Jackson was one of them. Nyla Voss was another. They heard the scream from the rift and didn't break. They listened, because buried beneath the chaos was recognition. This wasn't an alien mind. It was something more ancient than language, older than war. Something that watched the birth of galaxies and wrote the laws we called physics. It was order, and humanity had committed the ultimate rebellion, breaking order by creating an unnatural black hole, a synthetic singularity. In the eyes of this entity, this Oblivion, we had committed a sin worse than war. We had acted like gods. And gods don't forgive competition. Jackson moved, slow and deliberate, towards the helm of the Nox Eternus. The crew stared at him like he was walking underwater. "Broadcast to the entity," he said. Cora blinked. "Broadcast what?" He looked at her, his voice the calmest it had ever been. A choice. The rift pulsed. On Spectre, Nyla Voss did the same. Her thoughts synchronized with Wraith, not in command, but in fusion. She had allowed the AI to fully link, to process her memories, her fears, her humanity. "I'm not giving them Earth," she whispered, "but I'll give them me." In unison, two signals were sent. Jackson's from the Nox, Nyla's from Spectre, two human minds, two offers, one message. We created the spark. Let us carry the fire. The rift responded, not in words but in feeling, a vibration across the soul, a test, one last scream, one final judgment. The void shook. Then, silence. The breach stopped pulsing, the stars realigned, the shape, The thing that had no name receded, not out of defeat, not from fear, but curiosity. Because something in humanity intrigued it, not our weapons, not our rage, but our audacity, to fight, to destroy, to speak when we should have bowed. The rift closed like an eye blinking shut, and the unnatural light disappeared, leaving only the quiet hiss of static across every fleet's comms. And then a voice, faint, human, Jackson's. Status. Silence. Then Cora spoke. The entity is gone. On Spectre, Nyla slumped in her chair, eyes wide, pupils shaking but breathing. Wraith flickered back to life. We are not dead. No, Nyla whispered, eyes wet. We're remembered. Across the galaxy, Varn ships withdrew, not in defeat, in confusion. They had faced millions of enemies. But this was something else, something worse. They hadn't just fought humans. They'd fought a species willing to rip reality apart to win, and survive it. The message spread like wildfire through the stars. The species that broke the void, the animals who screamed into the dark, the minds that danced with madness, humanity. We were no longer feared. We were respected. We were myth